Hi, my name is Justin Odisho, and here's 50 quick video editing tips in Adobe Premiere Pro. If you ever drag a clip onto an empty timeline window, it'll open a new sequence exactly in these dimensions of that clip. So if I click on the clip and go to the Info tab, I can see that this clip was 3800 by 2100 pixels, which is essentially a 4K clip, so we have a 4K size sequence. Alternatively, you can go to File, New, Sequence, and use any one of these sequence presets, such as the DSLR 1080p presets, and you can always check in the sequence settings what that actually means. So here we have 1920 by 1080. That's your standard HD 16:9 ratio. Another tip is if you want to create a simple vertical video, you just have to flip this ratio from 16:9. So instead of 1920 by 1080, just do 1080 by 1920. This will flip things on their side, and if I press OK and create this new sequence, now we have this blank vertical video sequence. And you can see we have two sequences open. You can also rearrange these sequences in any way you want, and you can even stack these windows on top of each other or in different areas so you can see them both at the same time if you want. If you ever close any of your sequences like that and you think you lost it, you can actually see these sequences in the project media panel. If you created a new clip from a sequence, it'll just have the same name in the thumbnail of whatever the sequence begins with. But you can tell by this little icon in the corner that that is a sequence, and I hover over it and it tells me it's a sequence. So if I double click it, it'll open it back up. I can double click it, it'll open these sequences back up. Alternatively, you can also just right click on any clip and choose new sequence from clip, because once you have something already open on the timeline, then you can't really do the dragging on trick anymore. So new sequence from a clip, again, will create a new sequence in the size of whatever that clip was, which you can check in the Info tab. If you ever mess up your workspace and you have all these different windows open and you don't want them like that, then you just have to go to Window, Workspace, Reset to Saved Layout. And this will put everything back in the default layout. And you also have a bunch of different workspace presets that you can choose from. Right now I'm in all panels, which looks like this. But if I preferred it to look like this with a bigger monitor, I can just put things where I want them and then go to Window, Workspace, and I can save my own new custom workspace. So I can call it Custom Workspace, and I can always keep it things how I want them when I work. So keep that in mind. Resetting your workspace is a very go-to troubleshooting tip and an important tip. So another tip is that you can organize your project panel's media in a lot of different ways. So one, you can zoom in or out of the icons to see what's going on. You can highlight over things to scrub through the video a little bit, but you can also change to a list view if you want to see, like, here's the sequences I had open and here's just the regular clips. They're all color coded in different ways. And you can even have this new freeform view where it's more like you can batch things together in a freeform way if that's a way that works better for you. So do keep in mind that there's a lot of flexibility there, and there's actually more types of things that you can do while you have this panel highlighted. So while you have this panel highlighted, if you ever go to File, New, you can create all types of blank media that's not just clips. So you can add a simple black video clip, and if you go down to the newest item in the project panel, let's see, that's this new black video clip that we've created, which can come in handy when you're editing projects. You can also add color mats, which are just like that black video, but you can make just a solid colored mat of whatever color you want and add that. It'll show up in your project panel, and you can add that onto your sequence and use that for titles or backdrops or whatever. And another really useful one is that you can create adjustment layers. So you can go to File, New Adjustment Layer while that panel is highlighted. And what adjustment layers do is allow you to create certain effects that span over multiple clips. So for example, if I had two video clips on the track and I dragged an adjustment layer over top both of them, and then I went to my effects panel and I added something like a blur, for example. Let's just do a directional blur. Since this effect is on the adjustment layer, it affects everything that is underneath it. So adjustment layers are a really powerful tool, but a quick tip is that you can find them there when you go to the project panel in File, New. Focusing in on the actual timeline now, that we're working with multiple different tracks. Another way you can just make more tracks is just drag your topmost layer up a little bit. So it's 3 tracks by default, but if you drag it up, you'll just create another track, and you can do that so on. If you want to just right click here and click add tracks, you can actually add more than one at a time. If I wanted to just add 3 more video tracks and put them after this latest track or before, however you want to put it, I can press OK, and that'll just automatically add those. And this is great because sometimes when you're editing, you do have multiple things stacked and you want to blend and adjust in different ways. Some more quick tips on how to read this menu. You have a few buttons here, V1 and these track targeting items. You see some are highlighted blue and some are not. This is really useful for telling Premiere what track you want to target. So let's say I copy this clip. So I'll Command C, and if I were to just Command V it right now, where would Premiere paste it? Because it has 8 different tracks to choose from. That is where it'll paste it on whatever track is targeted. So if I press Command V right now with track 1 targeted, it'll paste right over and cut whatever was in there, which you might not want to do. But if I highlight track 7 or one of those empty tracks and don't highlight track 1, then it'll paste there, which is maybe what I want to do in this case so that I don't mess up whatever's on track 1. So track targeting and track highlighting is really useful. Another shortcut, for example, is if you want to jump right to the cuts of a clip, if you press up and down, you'll see that it'll jump to exactly the cuts of a clip, but it only considers the tracks that are targeted. So right now, if I press the down arrow key, it jumps here. But if I don't highlight track 6, then I press the arrow key, it'll only jump to the cuts on track 1, which can be really useful when you want to get right to the start of a clip. If you hold shift while moving down and up, that will just act as if you have all of the tracks targeted, and it will consider the cuts on every track. So that can be a quick shortcut for you as well. Another tip is if you just use the right and left arrow keys, that'll move 1 frame right and left. And if you just use the right and left arrow keys while holding shift, that'll move 5 frames left or right, which can be really useful. If you ever want to move to just exactly one point in the clip too, in the top left corner, you can actually see the playhead position. Right now it's on 7 seconds and 21 frames. So if I want to just move exactly to 10 seconds so I can make an edit at 10 seconds, I can just type that in and press enter. It'll move the playhead exactly there as well. Another really useful functional tip is these zoom in and zoom out bars at the bottom of the window. Very often you might want to zoom really far in, just do a 1 frame adjustment, but then zoom really far out so you can see exactly what's going on, like over larger portions of your edit. That's something that you should know, but if you don't, it's very useful just dragging it. You can also use the plus and minus arrow keys on your keyboard to do it quickly, but I usually just go to this and click and drag it with my mouse. I guess it depends if you're working on a laptop or desktop, whatever's easier for you. And additionally, if you ever zoom in to just this top and down portion, you can make all your tracks bigger, or if you just click on one track, you can make just that one track bigger. And the reason to do this is you can start to see the actual thumbnail of what's going on in the clip if you want to visually see it. And you can start to edit the clip with this line here. And you can do things like lower the clip opacity or adjust different keyframes such as the motion or speed of the clip using this line and visually adjusting, which doesn't pop up unless your clip is zoomed in at least a certain amount. So if you want to edit in that way. So more quick tips on the timeline is if you are working with multiple clips and there's spaces between them, as you might end up with, you can actually click and highlight those spaces between a clip. And if you press delete, that's going to delete that space within the clip. So let's say I want to trim off the end of this clip. If I trim it here and then delete that space, it snaps it back to the next closest cut. However, if I wanted to do that all in one swift button, there's another way. So a quick tip, obviously, Command Z is undo. I don't even know if that's a tip. Everybody should know that for many programs, but Command Z undoes and Shift Command Z moves forward. You might not know that. So you can undo backward and forward with Command Z or Shift Command Z. However, if I want to just do all of that in one button. If I just press Q, that will be ripple delete left. It'll just take whatever this clip is and it will trim it to the left to the closest cut. And remember, this keeps into account track targeting. So if I have this other clip up here and I have that targeted and I press Q to ripple delete, it'll ripple delete considering this as well. Alternatively, if we're moving to the right, you can just press W and that'll ripple delete to the right and basically chop off whatever is the extra trim on the end and push everything else back and forward, instead of doing something like trimming the clip or cutting the clip and then deleting it and then moving the clip back over. You could simply ripple delete. That comes in very handy as well. Another useful tool on the timeline is highlighting multiple clips. So if you hold shift, you can highlight multiple different clips at once. So I can highlight these three and move them. I can highlight things like this just by clicking the mouse and dragging. But sometimes you might just want to highlight, one or two that are in opposing areas. That's where you just hold shift and click them, and then you can just move these two only. In the next part of this video, we're going to be learning more tips about working with the timeline, editing clips, and all the different preferences and shortcuts available in Premiere Pro. So stay tuned, click on the next video to keep up with this playlist, and subscribe here on YouTube to stay tuned for all my videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you over in the next part.